I could hear the echoes of Michael's scream. Even after he was gone, they'll search the church. They'll find him. And when they do, it's not just Father Joseph who'll be buried beneath the lies. Crestwood had always been a quiet town. It sat nestled between low, rolling hills, surrounded by ancient woods that seemed to breathe with the seasons. The town had the kind of old-world charm that made people want to stay, though the streets, like the people, carried secrets. There were no big scandals or spectacular crimes here, or at least, that's what everyone thought. But in truth, beneath the surface of this peaceful facade lay a brewing storm, one that would shatter lives and leave Crestwood forever changed. At the center of this storm was a woman named Veronica Hale. Veronica had lived in Crestwood for over a decade. She was the kind of woman who made an impression without trying. Her raven black hair, always neatly pinned back, and her slender, almost statuesque figure made her stand out at every community gathering. In her mid-30s, she seemed to have it all: 2 children, a successful husband, and a house on the edge of town with a view that overlooked the valley. But for all the perfection, Veronica was profoundly lonely. Her husband, Oliver Hale, worked long hours as an accountant for a firm in the city. He left before the children woke up and came home late into the night, often too exhausted to talk. At first, Veronica didn't mind. She loved the quiet moments when the children were at school and the house felt still. But over time, those moments began to weigh on her. The silence, once comforting, became oppressive. Her life, once full of purpose, began to feel like a monotonous routine she couldn't escape. The growing emptiness inside her was something she could never explain to Oliver. He was a good man, dedicated to his family, and she loved him for that. But she began to feel like a ghost in her own home, invisible and drifting. What she needed was something more, something that would make her feel alive again. That's when she met Father Joseph Calloway. Father Joseph had come to St. Luke's Catholic Church only a year before Veronica's life began to unravel. He wasn't like the priests Crestwood had known before. He was young for his position, barely in his 40s, with salt and pepper hair that curled at the edges of his collar. His sharp, intelligent eyes seemed to pierce right through you, and his deep voice could make even the most cynical parishioner feel heard. From the moment Father Joseph arrived, he revitalized the church. Attendance grew, and the community became more involved than ever. He had an undeniable magnetism, one that drew people in, not just for religious reasons, but for comfort. People felt that Father Joseph understood their struggles, their doubts, their quiet pains. He was a man who could carry the burdens of others, but Father Joseph carried his own burdens too. Though he had taken his vows seriously, the loneliness of the priesthood was something that weighed on him more heavily than he ever let on. The isolation, the constant need to be a pillar of strength for others, it all wore him down. And despite his calm and steady presence, he was still a man with desires and weaknesses. Deep down, he yearned for connection, for intimacy, for someone to see him as more than just a man of God. When Veronica started coming to Mass more frequently, lingering after services to talk, he saw in her a reflection of his own loneliness. At first, their conversations were about faith, about her role as a mother and wife. But over time, they grew closer. Veronica opened up about her isolation, her longing for something more. Father Joseph listened, offering her words of comfort, but he found himself drawn to her in ways that went beyond his priestly duties. What began as casual conversations soon turned into secret meetings. Veronica would visit the church late in the evening when the pews were empty and the town was quiet. They would sit in the candlelit chapel, talking for hours. But as the weeks passed, their meetings grew more intense, more intimate. It wasn't long before the emotional bond they shared turned into a physical affair. Oliver Hale, oblivious to the growing distance between him and his wife, was consumed by his work. At 45, he had built a successful career in accounting, but it came at a cost. He spent more time at the office than at home, and though he loved Veronica, he had become detached. His work was a refuge from the complexities of life at home. There were fewer arguments, fewer distractions, and fewer reminders that his marriage was not what it once was. Oliver wasn't the type to suspect infidelity. He trusted Veronica implicitly and never imagined she could find solace in someone else's arms. But as Veronica grew more distant, even he began to notice the change. She was quieter, more secretive, and often distracted. He chalked it up to stress or the pressures of managing the household, but a nagging feeling in the back of his mind told him there was more to it than that. Oliver wasn't wrong, and when the truth finally came crashing down, it would destroy everything he thought he knew about his life. The affair between Veronica and Father Joseph might have remained hidden, had it not been for Michael. Michael was a regular at St. Luke's, a man in his late 50s who had always been a little too curious for his own good. He lived alone in a small apartment above the hardware store, spending his days fixing things and his evenings at the church. He'd always had a soft spot for Father Joseph, admiring the young priest's energy and commitment to the parish. But Michael had a habit of sticking his nose where it didn't belong. One evening, after staying late to clean up after a community event, Michael saw something he shouldn't have. As he made his way through the dimly lit church, he caught a glimpse of Veronica and Father Joseph in a heated embrace behind the altar. The sight of them together stopped him cold. He watched in stunned silence as their secret unfolded before his eyes. Michael knew he had to do something. He couldn't let this go on, not in his church, not with his priest. The next day he confronted Father Joseph, cornering him in the vestry. "You've crossed a line," Father Michael said, his voice low and trembling with anger. "This isn't right, and you know it. If you don't tell the congregation, I will." But Father Joseph wasn't about to let his life fall apart. The affair had already spiraled out of control, and the thought of losing everything, his position, his reputation, his connection to Veronica, filled him with dread. Desperate to keep his secret, he agreed to meet Michael later that night at the church bell tower, claiming he wanted to explain everything. The night air was thick with mist as Father Joseph led Michael up the narrow stairs of the old tower. As they reached the top, Michael's voice grew louder, more insistent. He demanded that Father Joseph come clean. In a moment of blind panic, Father Joseph pushed Michael. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Michael's scream echoed into the night as his body plummeted to the ground below. Father Joseph stood frozen at the edge of the tower, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't believe what he had done. Michael lay motionless on the stone pavement, a pool of blood forming around his broken body. Without thinking, Father Joseph descended the stairs, dragging Michael's body into the basement of the church and hiding it under a pile of old pews. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, but he couldn't stop now. He had to carry on as if nothing had happened. The disappearance of Michael didn't go unnoticed for long. Within days, whispers began to spread around town, and soon the police were involved. Detective Marissa Grey, a sharp, no-nonsense investigator from the nearby city, was assigned to the case. Crestwood didn't see much crime, and a missing person was enough to shake the community. Detective Grey wasn't one to be easily fooled. In her mid-40s, she had seen it all: murders, betrayals, secrets that tore families apart. As she interviewed members of the church and the community, it became clear that something was off about Father Joseph. He was too composed, too rehearsed. And Veronica, with her sudden avoidance of the church, piqued Grey's interest. There was more to the story, and Grey was determined to uncover the truth. Over the coming weeks, the tension in Crestwood grew unbearable. Father Joseph struggled to maintain his facade, while Veronica sank deeper into guilt and fear. Oliver, increasingly suspicious, began watching Veronica more closely, determined to find out what was going on. The town, once peaceful and quiet, was now buzzing with rumors of infidelity, secrets, and lies. It wasn't long before Detective Grey's investigation uncovered the truth. She found Michael's body hidden in the church basement, his death no longer a mystery but a murder. The hunt for Father Joseph began, and as the town came to terms with the dark truth about their beloved priest, Veronica's world came crashing down. Father Joseph fled Crestwood, but there was no escaping the consequences of his actions. Detective Grey and her team tracked him down in the dense woods beyond the town, where he was finally arrested. As he was led away in handcuffs, the weight of his sins crushed him. Crestwood would never be the same. The once idyllic town was left to grapple with the fallout of the tragedy, a tragedy born out of loneliness, desperation, and the choices that pushed people beyond the edge. The town would heal, but the scars would remain, etched into the memories of those who had lived through it.